Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. We've got an explosive story today that you do not want to miss. If you love real stories that expose corruption and fight injustice, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Your support helps us keep bringing the truth to light. The tension inside the New York courtroom was suffocating. Every seat in the gallery was filled, reporters packed shoulder to shoulder, cameras flashing like lightning storms. Outside, a roaring crowd gathered, their chants echoing through the marble halls of the courthouse. This wasn't just another case, this was the moment America had been waiting for. Sitting at the defendant's table was William Monroe, a billionaire real estate mogul accused of embezzling billions in government funds. The case was already making headlines, but what really had the nation on edge was the judge presiding over the trial, Richard Calloway. Rumors had been swirling for months that Calloway had deep ties to Monroe, that his gavel wasn't a symbol of justice but a shield for the wealthy elite. Many feared the trial was rigged before it even began. At the prosecution table, Merrick Garland, the U.S. Attorney General, sat with a steely gaze, flipping through his notes. He had built an airtight case, one with undeniable evidence, bank statements, secret emails, whistleblower testimonies. But he knew this wasn't just about proving Monroe's guilt. It was about exposing the rot at the very core of the justice system. The bailiff's voice boomed through the courtroom. "All rise." Everyone stood as Judge Calloway entered, his black robe billowing behind him. He didn't even glance at Garland as he took his seat. Instead, he smirked slightly, a man who already knew the final verdict. "Let's get this over with," Calloway muttered as he shuffled some papers. His tone was dismissive, uninterested. "Ms. Bondi, oh, excuse me, Mr. Garland, I assume you have some sort of argument prepared? Or are we just wasting taxpayer dollars today?" A few chuckles rippled from Monroe's legal team, but the rest of the courtroom was dead silent. Garland didn't blink. He had faced power-hungry men before, but Calloway? He reeked of arrogance, of someone who thought he was untouchable. "Your Honor," Garland said, his voice firm, "this case isn't about wasting taxpayer dollars. It's about stealing them." The tension in the room thickened. This was no longer just a trial, this was war. From the moment Judge Richard Calloway took his seat, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. The tension wasn't just thick, it was electric, crackling through the air like a thunderstorm about to break. Calloway, a man whose career had been built on whispers and backroom deals, barely spared U.S. Attorney General Merrick Garland a glance as he adjusted his robe. Seated across from him, William Monroe, the billionaire real estate tycoon on trial for the embezzlement of billions in government funds, sat cool and composed, his expensive legal team lined up beside him. He wasn't worried, not yet. Because if the rumors were true, he had the judge in his pocket. Garland, however, wasn't blind. He had seen judges like Calloway before, men who believed the law bent for the rich and powerful. But he wasn't about to let that slide, not with the evidence he had. Before Garland could even present his opening statement, Calloway leaned forward, his voice dripping with mock impatience. "Mr. Garland, let's keep this brief. The American people have better things to do than listen to a pointless circus act." The defense team smirked. Monroe didn't even try to hide his grin. The fix was in. But Garland didn't flinch. He merely folded his hands on the table and spoke, his voice measured and precise. "Your Honor, the American people deserve to hear the truth. And this circus act, as you call it, involves billions of dollars stolen from taxpayers. If that isn't worth their time, then I question whose time you believe is valuable." The air in the courtroom shifted. The audience, reporters, spectators, even the jury, felt the weight of that statement. Calloway's smirk twitched. He wasn't used to being challenged, especially not in his own courtroom. "Careful, Mr. Garland," Calloway sneered, tapping his gavel lightly. "I run this courtroom, not you." Garland met his gaze, unwavering. "For now." A murmur spread through the room. Calloway's expression darkened. He had expected this to be a formality, a trial where he could bury the evidence before it ever saw the light of day. But now, he was realizing this wouldn't be so easy. And for the first time, a flicker of unease crossed his face. The courtroom was no longer just a battleground of arguments, it was a war zone of power and corruption. Every second that passed added another layer of tension, and for the first time in his long career, Judge Richard Calloway looked uncomfortable. Merrick Garland had seen it before, the subtle twitch of a man realizing his grip was slipping. But he didn't celebrate yet. The real fight was just beginning. Calloway tapped his gavel, but the sharp crack didn't silence the growing murmurs from the gallery. The weight of the moment hung in the air like a storm cloud, thick, heavy, inevitable. With measured precision, Garland clicked to the next slide on the courtroom's projector. The screen lit up with damning evidence, a series of wire transfers, all traced back to Monroe's shell companies, with Calloway's own name appearing in a suspicious financial ledger. The room gasped in unison. The defense team stiffened. William Monroe's confident smirk vanished. Calloway's knuckles went white against his bench. "This is inadmissible," he snapped. "This document is irrelevant to the case at hand." Garland didn't even blink. "Your Honor, this document was subpoenaed legally and directly connects this courtroom's presiding judge to the very fraud we are prosecuting. If it's inadmissible, I would love to hear your reasoning." The murmurs grew louder. Reporters scribbled furiously, already seeing the headlines. Judge in Monroe trial tied to corruption scheme. Calloway caught in crossfire, cover-up exposed. The jury's eyes darted between Calloway and Garland. Even the bailiff, who had spent decades standing quietly in this room, couldn't hide his surprise. For the first time in his career, Calloway was on the defensive. His voice dropped to a dangerous growl. "Mr. Garland, I suggest you tread carefully. You are accusing a sitting federal judge of complicity in corruption. I would hate for you to suffer the consequences of reckless speculation." Garland's lips barely curved into a smirk. Reckless speculation. He turned back to the screen, clicking again. A second document appeared, an email exchange between Monroe's team and Calloway. The final message, dated 1 week before the trial, sent shockwaves through the room. "Don't worry. I'll handle Garland." The courtroom erupted into chaos. For the first time, Calloway looked afraid. The gavel slammed down hard, but it did nothing to stop the wildfire that had already ignited in the courtroom. Judge Richard Calloway's face was stone, but his eyes betrayed him, calculating, scrambling for control. Merrick Garland didn't move. He had him. The damning email on the screen, the one Calloway himself had sent, hung in the air like a noose tightening around his neck. "Don't worry. I'll handle Garland." It was all the confirmation the prosecution needed. Calloway had been compromised. The tension in the courtroom was suffocating. Even the defense attorneys, once smug and dismissive, now looked like they wanted to be anywhere else. William Monroe, the billionaire developer at the heart of the scandal, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. His lifeline, the corrupt judge who had been pulling strings behind the scenes, was unraveling right before his eyes. Garland stepped forward, voice calm, unshaken. "Your Honor," he said, deliberately slow, letting the weight of the moment sink in for everyone watching, "I assume you have an explanation for this email." The judge stiffened. "This is an outrageous breach of protocol. Not as outrageous as a sitting judge being exposed for aiding and abetting a defendant in an active federal case." Garland's words cut through the courtroom like a blade. Calloway opened his mouth, but no words came. For the first time, he had no script, no escape plan. The gallery was a sea of reporters frantically typing on their phones, jurors exchanging shocked glances, even the bailiff standing rigid, his jaw tight. Then came the voice that changed everything. "Your Honor," the bailiff said, stepping forward, hand resting on the handcuffs clipped to his belt. Under federal law, I am obligated to inform you that, given the evidence, you are now a subject of an internal investigation. You will need to step down. The air was sucked out of the room. Judge Calloway's mask shattered. You can't be serious, he muttered, voice hoarse. I am the judge here. Not anymore. It was Merrick Garland's voice this time. Cold. Certain. Final. The cameras flashed. Calloway had played God in his courtroom for years. Now, he was nothing but a man waiting for the cuffs. Judge Richard Calloway sat frozen, his world collapsing in slow motion. His fingers twitched, grasping at the bench as if clinging to power that was already slipping away. The courtroom no longer belonged to him. The weight of 1,000 eyes bore down, cameras flashing like lightning, capturing the fall of a man who had ruled with arrogance and unchecked authority. Judge Calloway, the bailiff repeated, his voice firmer this time, his hand hovering over his cuffs. You are now a subject of a federal corruption investigation. I need you to step down from the bench immediately. Calloway's jaw tightened. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. He had spent decades bending the law to his will, manipulating cases, crushing prosecutors who dared to challenge him. He was the one who decided fates, who wielded power with a smirk. And now, they were turning it against him. This is a mistake, Calloway hissed through clenched teeth. He turned toward the defense attorney, William Monroe's high-powered lawyer, expecting support. But Monroe was already stepping back, his fingers tightening around the edges of his table. His smirk was gone. His lifeline was sinking, and he wasn't about to go down with it. Judge Calloway, Merrick Garland said, his voice slicing through the chaos. This isn't a mistake. The only mistake was thinking you could get away with this. The judge's breath hitched. His legacy, his empire, it was burning. 2 federal marshals entered the courtroom, their uniforms crisp, their steps purposeful. One of them, a tall man with piercing eyes, walked straight toward the bench. Sir, you need to come with us, the marshal said. For a moment, just a fraction of a second, Calloway considered resisting. Standing his ground. Fighting back. Then he saw the jurors, staring at him with the same judgment he had so often dished out. The reporters, their hands moving like wildfire across their keyboards. The cameras, capturing every moment of his downfall. And he knew. He had already lost. Calloway stood slowly, stiffly, like a man walking to his own execution. The bailiff reached for his wrist. The cold steel of the cuffs snapped shut. Gasps rippled through the gallery. The mighty Judge Richard Calloway had been reduced to nothing more than a criminal in a suit. And as he was led from the courtroom, Garland didn't smile, didn't gloat. He just watched. Because justice had finally come.